Today, I want to talk about the workbench. The workbench is our not the most important tool in our woodworking arsenal, because every tool that we use on a daily basis or a monthly basis or whatever basis is important. But it is critical. Without a workbench, how are you going to build? We can go down the Japanese route, but they still have a bit of wood, which serves as a workbench. You can use a Roman style workbench, low, flat. It's still a workbench. So it's pretty much up there. It's important. Now, this style of workbench that I have, and it's in one of the issues in the Lost Scrolls of Handwork magazine on how to build it, when I was actually building this one. This is an English or a typical English-sized workbench. It's not as long as what they used to have it. Mine is about 8 foot. And back in the day, they used to have 9-foot benches or 12-foot. Personally, my favorite type of workbench is the shaker style, and that's the one that Bob Rosiewski built for himself. But this is a very good workbench. It is plenty long enough for any type of work that I do, but it isn't long enough. It's 1 foot shorter. It could be even a 7 foot. Actually, now when I come to think about it, I don't remember exactly whether I built a 7 foot or an 8 foot. But whether it's a 7 foot or 8 foot, it's still shorter than 9 feet. And if I was doing molding for bookshelves and things like that, then I would need a 9 foot. And that's all primarily got to do with hand tool only woodworking. For machine-based woodworking, that isn't an issue. You can have a very short bench because you're not going to use your bench to make moldings. So you're not going to use molding planes. So the dog holes are strategically placed. I just copied basically from the Nicholson's workbench. And, lo and behold, they work very, very well. Majority of the holes that I use come in from about there, because that's kind of the length of boards that I work with. I yet haven't used these ones in the back because I haven't, built anything as long. But when it comes time to, if I even have the finances to do it, I always wanted to have or build for myself, particularly myself, a grandfather clock. So we will see in the future if that will or will not happen. So all the dog holes for the holdfast, are placed exactly where they should be. Even the top, I've never had to go and make extra ones other than these two for my planing stock. This centerpiece comes up. You can pull it out if you want, but you can see I've made these notches here as such. So you can, kind of hard to do with one hand, but you move it across as such, and now this becomes a planing stop. From a planing stop, it also becomes, well, a sawyer's stop, if that's the right word for it. You butt the wood up against it, and then, which you've seen me do many a times. So this is a great idea. When I first built this, there were no gaps, but because of seasonal movements and lots of humidity, lots of moisture around in where I live, this pretty much, was locked in there. So I planed it down so much over time that, there's just visible gaps everywhere. And then damages like this and so forth. But anyway, that works really, really well. So you can plane across the grain. You can do molding type of work, but I've never actually had to do any of that on the bench, but you certainly can do it. I've built myself a what you call a stick, and you see that one there in the background. So it's a workbench is pretty important, and this particular size English style workbench is, for me, it works really, really well. I would have a preference to put in a tail vise, which I didn't. And that would definitely be on my next workbench if I build one. The height is most crucial when it comes to hand tool woodworking. Initially, this workbench was very low. So it was about 30 inches high. And the idea with that is that you put your back into it when you're hand planing. You minimally use your forearms. And this is how the old timers did it before the invention of machinery. And even during the invention of machinery, they still planed, hand planed. It's only until what, 60s, 70s, that they started to move away from hand planes. And the resurgence that we had back in 2010 was reintroducing them back into the workshop. So having a low workbench will assist you in planing, it will assist you in sawing, you will saw better, you will saw more accurately. You will not have to, and you shouldn't anyway, use excessive downward pressure. Having a low bench adds naturally that slight downward pressure without you actually having to exert yourself at all, like zero. The shape of the handles, I'll pull out one, the shape of the handles, see how it's lifted slightly? It's designed for that particular reason, to assist you into applying that slight downward pressure without you having to do it. It's just, the way it's angled, it's the body mechanics, and it's just your body doing it naturally. yes, you get accurate cuts when it's a low workbench. But the downside to having a low workbench is when you start to age and then your back starts to act up, or let's just say, you've always suffered with back pain, but when you're young, you're pretty much fearless, and when you get older, you start to feel it. So it starts at 40, and then you get a double whammy at 50, and that double whammy goes into a three whammy, a triple whammy. So as you get older, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And having a low workbench, putting your back into it, doesn't help. So hand planing really does not help. Full stop. At all. Does not help your back. But what are you going to do? You're going to give up the craft because your back hurts? Well, not me. Some do. I love it too much to give it up. God forbid I'm ever forced to. So I raised the workbench. Oh, before I say that, how do you know what is the right size for you? Well, there is no fixed size. If everyone was, say, equal height, 5'9", which is what I am, then 30 inches is your go. But because there are people that are 6 foot, some are 6 foot, 3, some are 4'10". It all comes down to your height, and you measure by having your hand like this, placed on the side, if you can see that. So my hands are straight, placed on the side, and I measure from the palm of my hand downwards, and that is what the workbench should be. So in this case, you will see now how much. You can see where it was and how much higher it is now. So I raised the bench to, I think it's 35 inches. And that is pretty much the standard modern day workbench height. You see, in machine tool woodworking, having a low workbench is not necessary. Everything they do, they use routers on the tables, they use power sanders, they use, what do you call those, belt sanders, They'll use a drop saw. They don't need a low workbench. It would actually be a hindrance to them, other than for sanding. But I've lost my train of thought. So I raised the bench in order to relieve the back pain, or to alleviate the back pain. And to some degree it did, but I initially had it too high. I had it about, I think it was about 38 inches, I think it was. So for carving, and see, here's another thing, for carving, I've had my workbench at 40 inches high. I used to have these blocks. You can see in some of the old photos on my blog post at Journeyman's Journal. And that's misspelt journal on purpose. So instead of it being spelt with an A, I misspelt it with an E because I couldn't get the one with the A, but I really wanted the Journeyman's Journal. So And another thing, I also want to add that I know the journeyman means a man who's finished his trade. My intention was not that. My intention was, this is my journey and I'm writing a journal. I initially opened the blog for my grandkids, which I didn't have at the time, but I said, you know what, I'd love to keep a journal, and then my grandkids can visit this whenever. If one of them ever gets the woodworking gene, they can visit my blog. So it was my journey into woodworking, and I kept the journal. It's got actually nothing to do with, the tradesmen's, like the journeyman. When you finish your trade, then you become a journeyman. That's an old word that's just not used anymore. It's only just resurfaced again, because of, the resurgence in hand tool woodworking, Christopher Schwartz's Lost Art Press and this and that. It's no one's called the journeyman anymore. Maybe in America, but I even doubt that too. I doubt that. So at 40 inches high, you've got, I used to have this workbench at 40 inches high when I was carving. So if you're a carver, for you to have a low workbench, it isn't an issue. And I know Mary May, she has an old workbench. It's very, very old. It's not even flattened, but for her it's perfect. And she says she doesn't have any issues whatsoever with her back. So she can be crouched over her work, and she can do that all day, every day, and which she has. She's traveled the world, and to learn the fine arts of carving, and she's a fantastic carver. And there's so much I could learn from her, and there's so much I could learn from others as well. So but for me, being slouched over my work, like I'd have to crouch, I couldn't do it. I'd be in a lot of pain. So having a high workbench was pretty much basically up to my chest. And when I think about it, at 40 inches high, Paul Sellers, he has his workbench. I know that for a fact because the guy said it. He said on one of his YouTube videos that he made that he has his workbench at 40 inches. So he must be a very tall fella, probably 6'1". But even then, at 6'1", that bench is still too high. But because his initial training was at such workbenches, he's used to it. And it's like a guitarist. Instead of you'll always see a classical guitarist has his thumb behind whatever it's called, that wooden thing, and not over the frets like you do see, everyone else playing. So, that way is having your thumb, the classical way is the correct way, and what everyone else is doing is incorrect. But you can see it's, if you're used to it, and that's the only way you've ever done it, well, it's not really wrong then, because it works for you. As long as it works for you is what I'm trying to say. That's what I should have said all along. If it works for you, then so be it, But if it doesn't work for you, then you've got to work on it. You've got to fix it. So I then took that extra height. I cut the pieces off the bottom, and I lowered the workbench down to 35. and now it's just like everyone else. And yes, it's a lot better than what I had it at 38. That's for sure. A 38 for me was just too high. I couldn't plane properly. I'm just using my forearms, and that was a nightmare. It was also thicknessing boards was very, very difficult for me. It was awkward cross-cutting at the workbench. Anything I did other than carving and chisel work was extremely awkward. So I had to lower the bench. And now that I did, I can live with this. I'm not completely happy, but I can definitely live with this. I don't know if the pain would return if I knocked it down another inch. I'm not willing to do it, so I'm not gonna not even bother talking about that. So if you're a carver and you want to know what is the correct height for you, then you've got to measure from elbow down. So from the tip of your, there you go, the tip of your elbow, and it's kept in a horizontal position, your arm like this, right? And then you measure from the tip of your elbow down to the ground, and that's how you will know what is the correct height of your carver's workbench should be. Rob Cosman says for sharpening your bench, your sharpening station, right, the bench should be low. His is on the ends of his workbench, and it's somewhere down here. So I agree with that. I think that is very accurate, provided you are sharpening by hand. If you're not sharpening by hand, then as in without a honing guide, then you need to have a normal size workbench. If you are using a honing guide, I'm trying to say, sorry. If you're using a honing guide, you need to have a normal size workbench. If not, then you need to have a lower one, so then you can put your whole body weight down. The trick is to put your whole body weight down. The best example I could use for that is to watch Paul Sellers' face. I don't know if he's going to be watching this. I doubt it very much, but it'll probably trickle somewhere along the line that I've said this. You will see him pull funny faces when he is sharpening. And the reason is because he is putting pressure down on the iron itself. But I can't help but wonder why, because he doesn't use A2 steel. He doesn't use these modern day irons. It's old, old steel like from 01 and all of that. And with that stuff, you don't need to put it down a lot of pressure. You can just sharpen that with complete ease, and it shouldn't take you very long. And you can see it doesn't take him very long. But anyway, he puts a lot of pressure, downward pressure, and that is how you're supposed to do it. But I just mentioned that steel part because I know when I sharpen my, my scrub plane, that I converted an old Stanley 5 into a scrub plane. And that blade, it's just a modern day chromium, vanadium, whatever they call it. Doesn't last very long at all, I tell you. It's just junk. I just when I go to sharpen that, I don't even put any pressure. I just make a few swabs, and I got the burr at the back. That's That's what you need. That's you know, I don't know, I understand some people, they just sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. They get the burr, they take off the burr, and then they start sharpening still on the same stone. No, you get the burr in the back, you move to the next stone. That's how it's supposed to work. But anyway, each to their own. All right. So I've explained the height, explained the length. For hand tool woodworking, you need to have a very flat workbench, right? You don't need to have a machine flatness, like for example, with this Veritas straight edge, right? That's been flattened on both sides to the nth amount, which is whatever it is. I don't know how many microns it is. It's on their website, right? So if you can get it like that, happy days. But, you know, you can't. Not by hand anyway. And it's not necessary. This is flat. I hand planed it with my number 7. You know, it's important that you use a long plane because you can see how it's, you know, it's registering right across the board. If it was just a number 4, it would plane here, and if there's a dip, it would fall into there, which is why I don't understand why Paul Sellers said that he can flatten his workbench with a number 4. You know, I'm not doubting the guy, but I just don't understand. I don't see how you can do it. But, you know, again, if he's worked out a method that works for him and he's able to see the high spots and he just really takes just the high spots off that meets the low spots, then that's the only way that I can see it working. Any other way, it's just not possible. And even the historical books, they all say the same. So you need a number 7 or a number 8. I wish I bought the number 8 to tell you the truth, but that's only basic for edge planing. So with this here, this is, you know, flat. This is what you need. It's flat right across the entire length of the bench, right? And if you can see even there, look, I can't bring the phone because I'm holding it in a device, because someone said don't hold your phone the other way, you know, the shorts, but you know, those video shorts. So I'm just trying it this way. So there's, you know, that's pretty flat. I mean, you know, considering this is all done by hand. So it's flat across there. It's flat across there and there. It's flat across everyone. I've checked it for twist and wind and all of that. So this workbench is square and flat and trued and, you know, what, you know, you name it. And for me to do that on a regular basis, it's not a great deal of work. We're talking 10 minutes of work, give or take, you know, or actually maybe add another, maybe it's 13, 15, who cares? It doesn't really take, you know, it doesn't take forever to do. You can shorten the planing time by increasing your cut, but then, you know, you'll prematurely tire yourself out. So it's also important to have this, the apron, to be square to the surface. So it doesn't have to be completely square. You can make it like that, but it doesn't have to be. But as long as it's the length of, the width of the material that you work with the most. So mine is 8 inches, and this has to be 8 inches square across from there, like right, you know what I mean. And all of this that I'm telling you is for hand tool woodworking only. For machine woodworking, the only benefit that you will get from a flat table would be when you're assembling. So when you're gluing things up, you're clamping things, and you're using the surface or as a reference, that's the only benefit that you'll get from it. But for hand tool woodworking, your workbench is your reference bench. Without it, if this was out of whack, then the work that you do will also be out of whack. So I will pick out a piece here. None of this has been planed, I think, no? Let me see. No? Well, maybe, no, it hasn't. None of it's been planed, but it's still come off the planer. So this is just rough sawn. This side's been planed, somewhere in the factory, I believe. It's got ripples in it, but it's relatively flat. If my workbench wasn't flat, you wouldn't hear that puff sound of the wind, that comes out. And this would be rocking, and you would see like here, it's rocking, right? Now, I know it's got nothing to do with here, because I know that's flat, right? You can see it's flat. I can see it's flat. I can actually literally see that this is completely flat. I can't bring this foam without screwing everything up to it, but there's no light coming through, and I haven't got a torch in here or a flashlight for the few Yanks to prove there's no light coming through. So this is flat. I know that here there's got to be some, it's not a great deal, it's got to be a minute amount of twist in it. If this bench wasn't flat and I had a dip here and a hump here, then using this as a reference surface to plane this board would be a complete waste of time, because I'll be just chasing my own tail, constantly chasing my own tail. It's no different than if you use a straight edge that isn't straight, and then you go, is that flat? Yeah, pretty flat. You can see the look here. Can you see right there? There's a gap, because this part of the timber is low. This part of the timber is high. In fact, all of that is straight, and then it dips into there. Now, if this had, a hollow in there, let's say it was hollow and then it moved, and then it was flat along here, and this was flat, it would show as a gap. And then you'd be just forever trying to flatten this. It just won't happen. Because you're using something that's not flat as a reference surface. The same would apply to a hand plane. If a hand plane, now you can see we're getting a whole different picture here. You can see there's a hump, it's humped in the middle, and it dips off on the sides. But if this hand plane wasn't flat, you wouldn't see that. By the way, as I move this back, you can see now, oh God, you can see now where the Veritas straight edge showed that it was flat on the left-hand side, and there's a dip on the right-hand side, and here it's showing that different. So this wood is out of whack, and it needs to be planed for it to be true. But that is why, or one of the reasons why in a hand tool woodworking we need to have a complete flat bench, because this is our reference surface. So as for here with this being square, if you place a bit of timber here, and now you're going to make a rebate or a rabbet, as some call it in America, or as they all call it in America, but rebate is England and Australia. Your fence registers as off here, right? The board is registered off the table. If there is a dip, this will lift up. And now your rebate is no longer square, it's actually angled. This can happen too on a flat workbench. So it's important you know how to hold the tool, how to maintain that level of accuracy throughout the entire cut. And this is something you're going to have to teach yourself. It's also important that you set the plane up correctly. There's so many factors involved that it's just beyond the scope of this video. So it's also important for layout and assembly. It's for clamping and so forth. If your bench is out of whack and you clamp things that you're using the bench as a reference surface for, will also be out of whack. Having a flat workbench means that you can also use it as like a shooting board for long edges. So you place a bit of timber across here, and then you have your plane down as such, and then you shoot. And that definitely works. It's also what used to be done. And I made a shooting board for edges that you've seen in the other video, and I've also made another one for crosscut, and I'm going to sell this one here which is absolutely true, and it cuts very, very squarely. It's made from Tasmanian oak. It's quarter sawn. It's a fantastic shooting board, but if I were using this plane, which I can't put it in here, then having it ramped would give me a cleaner cut. But because I use a dedicated shooting plane, which is the Veritas version, and by the way, you can also use, I believe you can use the Lee Nielsen, but don't quote me on that. You can use the Veritas one on this only. And because that's angled and this is angled, so it's just, cancelling each other out. So I'm going to be selling this one for as little as $50. That's right, $50. You will see that plywood crap. It's not crap, I mean, it's a fully functioning shooting board. It's just that it's cheaply made, sell for $200 bloody. But who will be buying this will have this for the rest of their entire life because it's extremely well made and it works perfectly. This is, I think, I was going to say it's real rosewood and not this one. I think it's the other one or maybe it is. No, it's not. This is Mobile. That's right, that's what this one is. This is Mobile, this is decking timber, right? So you're not going to be wearing this out anytime soon. So yeah, that I'll be selling for 50 Australian dollars. I think it's going to be expensive to ship it off overseas, but for local, it's not going to be much at all. Maybe $20, $25, I don't know, something like that. 30 at the most, but whatever it is, I don't set the prices. I think I've covered pretty much everything. The vise, this type of vise I would never, ever make again. I do love the length of it though. What I don't like is this, because it does tend to rack, and I haven't figured out why, I've packed this in. I've done everything I possibly could to stop it from racking, but only one person could fix it, and that's Richard from the English Woodworker, because he used to make these type of benches and he knows exactly how to fix them. But the guy lives in England and I live in Australia, so that's not happening. So I've never worked with any other vise other than this one and this one here. I honestly don't know how Paul does it with these little tiny things. I don't even know how I used to do it, but I think this size bench, provided you use the whole lot, the whole length, is enough really to build whatever you want. But the tool tray in this, and the gap there and all of that, for me it's not ideal. But if you're just making small things like boxes and stuff like that, or even small mantle clocks, then this is enough. This for shipbuilding as well, as in model shipbuilding, this is actually ideal, really ideal. Okay, so I think I've pretty much said, I've said as much as I could. Mine is built from pine because it's soft, and I'd rather the bench get nicked than my work, or dented, I should say. I think I'm, yeah. Yeah, oh, actually one important thing. See, I put leather on this here. If you're going to put leather, then you need to go right across. Because when I place a bit of timber, there's a gap. So when I put timber in here, there's the thickness of this leather, gap, and then if you use a holdfast and then you clamp it to the side of the bench, then you've just bent the board. So it's not ideal to have leather here, but at the same time, you know, it works okay when this is a new bench and this is nice and flat. But when you start clamping things, this wood will any wood will depress. You know, there'll be marred and marked and so forth, and you know the holding, the grip and the holding power won't be as strong as the day you've made it. But with leather, it just continues to hold. So, and I'm not sure if I can actually take this off because I use that special leather glue to glue it on. So that's it. I think if you've listened to this whole video, congratulations. You're interested in gaining knowledge. You probably know some of these things. You probably didn't know any of these things. So, all right, that's it. That's all I've got to say. Thank you for watching and listening, taking the time and giving me the time.